I walked into the courtroom that morning with the kind of certainty you get after 40 years of watching people lie to your face. Trust me, it becomes a sport. And on that particular day, I didn't just feel it, I could smell it. Like someone had sprayed the room with a cheap perfume called Denial Number 5. The plaintiff, Mr. Harris, was sitting stiff as a board, clutching his medical bills like they were the last lifeboat on the Titanic. His arm was wrapped, his pant leg torn, and he had that tight-lipped expression people get when they're too angry to cry but too embarrassed to shout. Across from him sat the defendant, a woman named Carla Donnelly, a 40-something self-appointed expert in everything except the truth. She had sunglasses perched on her head even indoors, the international symbol for I'm already lying. The moment I looked at her, she avoided eye contact. Wonderful. Nothing spices up my morning like a guilty conscience trying to hide behind a rhinestone headband. All right, I said, taking my seat. Let's get the nonsense over with quickly. Mr. Harris, what happened? He cleared his throat like he was starting an audiobook. Your Honor, I was walking past Miss Donnelly's house when her dog ran out of the yard and attacked me. It bit my leg, knocked me over, and I held up my hand. Stop before your voice gets tired. I've read the complaint. You're saying this woman's dog bit you. We don't need a dramatic reenactment. I'm not hiring you for television. He gave a small nod. He understood the assignment. Then I turned my attention to Miss Donnelly, who suddenly found the floor fascinating. Miss Donnelly, I assume you'll be denying you own this dog. Her head jerked up like I'd caught her stealing cookies. Yes, Your Honor. I mean, I know the dog, but it's not mine. There it was, the spark, the match, the lie. My internal alarm went off so loudly I could have sworn the bailiff heard it too. Let me get this straight, I said. A dog comes out of your yard on your property past your fence and you want me to believe it belongs to the Tooth Fairy. She blinked rapidly. Never a good sign. Rapid blinking is the human version of buffering, people trying to come up with a lie that doesn't make them sound as foolish as they feel. Well, it hangs around sometimes, she muttered. But it's just a stray. I leaned back. A stray. That conveniently responds to the name Buddy, which you shouted at it while chasing it down the street after the attack. The plaintiff's head whipped toward me. He didn't know I had that detail. She froze. I don't need magic, just police reports. I was just trying to help, she stammered, to get it away from him. I raised an eyebrow. So a strange dog not yours mysteriously knows your voice, your yard, your property boundaries, your back door, but somehow you're a good Samaritan who decided to chase it for cardio. Her lips pressed together, but she still clung to the lie like it came with dental benefits. Miss Donnelly, let me explain something to you in small, chewable pieces. When you open your mouth in this courtroom, your words must resemble reality. Right now they resemble fiction, and not even good fiction. I've heard better plots from children playing with sock puppets. The gallery snickered. She scowled at them as if embarrassment were their fault. Mr. Harris, I continued, tell me what happened right before the dog attacked. He took a breath. I was just walking my normal route. I didn't approach the house. I didn't provoke anything. The dog ran straight at me. I tried to back away, but I didn't have time. I could see he was telling the truth. People who lie give too much detail or too little. This man gave just enough. Clean, simple, factual. Did you see Miss Donnelly during the attack? Yes, he said. She came out yelling, Buddy, Buddy, no, get back here. I swiveled sharply toward her. Amazing coincidence. The stray dog apparently has a name, and commands, and loyalty. A real mystery how that works. She crossed her arms. Lots of people call their pets Buddy, and lots of people call me Your Honor, I snapped. But that doesn't mean they own the judiciary. Her eyes darted. People do that when they're trying to escape without moving. I pressed on. Let's go over the evidence. Animal control records show the dog has been reported at your address 3 times in the last 6 months. Your neighbor down the street, whom I trust more than your testimony at this moment, submitted a statement that she sees you walking the dog every morning. That's incorrect, she spat. I walk lots of dogs. I do rescue work. Wonderful, I said. Then you should rescue yourself from this story because it's collapsing. I leaned forward, locking eyes with her. Miss Donnelly, you are not in a creative writing seminar. You are in a courtroom. And in my courtroom, fiction has consequences. The tension in the room thickened. Even the air conditioner seemed to hold its breath. Now I said, "Do you want to try that answer again?" She hesitated, then shook her head stubbornly. "It's not my dog." The level of denial could have fueled a small city. "Fine," I said. "We'll continue. Mr. Harris, after the dog bit you, what happened?" "I fell. It tore my pant leg. I ended up with 9 stitches. Medical bills. Right here." He handed them over. I skimmed the numbers. Not outrageous, just the price of someone else's irresponsibility. I turned back to the defendant. "Miss Donnelly, do you intend to pay this man's bills?" "No, because it's not my dog." Her voice cracked ever so slightly. Lies crack people from the inside out. "Let me ask you something," I said. "When was the last time you fed this not your dog?" She flinched. "I mean, I might have given it leftovers once or twice, or daily for the last year, because your neighbor says she hears you calling it inside every night." Her cheeks flushed. Bingo. I struck while the truth was wobbling. "If I were to subpoena your security camera footage, would I see that dog walking into your house?" "No." "Too fast? Too loud? Too wrong?" I held up a hand. "Miss Donnelly, if you lie again, I will find you in contempt so fast your shoes will still be in the doorway when the officers take you out. Do you understand?" She swallowed. "Yes, Your Honor." "Good. Now tell me the truth." Silence. Long, heavy. She twisted her fingers. Her jaw clenched. Finally, a crack. "It might have stayed in my house a few times." Progress. I didn't smile. Judges don't celebrate partial truths. But inwardly, I noted the trajectory: denial, panic, admission. Define a few. Maybe every night? Every night for how long? A year. And you still want to maintain you don't own the dog. Her voice shrank to a whisper. Technically, there is no technically. I cut in. There is reality and there is nonsense. Pick one. Before she could answer, I added, "Let me save you time. You own the dog." She sank back in her seat. And more importantly, I continued, "You own the consequences." She looked like she wanted the floor to open and swallow her whole. Unfortunately for her, the floor in my courtroom is solid and unforgiving, just like accountability. I leaned back in my chair and folded my hands. Let's use our adult brains for a moment. You take the dog into your home. You feed it. You let it sleep there. You yell at it like a tired parent when it barks at the mailman. You walk it in the morning. You call it by name. You've done this for a year, and you want me to believe you don't own it. She stared stubbornly at the table. I never signed any paperwork. Of course, I said dryly, because as we all know, dogs come with title documents and registration slips like cars. If you don't sign the purchase contract, they remain spiritual beings with no earthly owner. The gallery chuckled. She didn't. Let's move to something slightly more adult than this argument, I continued. Do you work, Miss Donnelly? Yes, she muttered. I do bookkeeping. Good, I said. Then you understand numbers. You understand responsibility. You understand that if a company kept saying that account isn't ours, every time a bill came due, the IRS would decorate them like a Christmas tree. You can't claim the good parts of ownership and deny the messy parts. I turned to the plaintiff. Mr. Harris, show me the photographs from the incident. He walked up, handed the bailiff his phone, and the images were put on the monitor. Bitten calf, torn pants, blood, the kind of ugly wound that makes you instinctively pull your own leg back, as if pain is contagious through pixels. Then the next photo appeared. Stop, I said. There in the background was a tan dog, mid-bark teeth bared, and right behind it, blurred but unmistakable, was Miss Donnelly on her front lawn, her mouth open like she was yelling. Who took these? I asked. I did, Your Honor, he replied. After I pulled away, I just hit the camera button a bunch of times. Smart man. People think evidence is what lawyers bring in boxes. No, evidence is what ordinary people capture in the moment because something inside them says, this is wrong. Miss Donnelly, I said, my voice cooling, is that your front yard in the background of this photo? Yes, she said quietly. And that's the same dog we've been discussing? Yes. And that's you behind it? She hesitated. Yes. So the dog standing on your property in front of your house with you behind it bit this man on a public sidewalk, correct? Her shoulders slumped. Yes. Progress again. I could practically hear her excuses fighting to stay alive. It's not my fault. It's not my dog. It's not my problem. Denial is stubborn. Unfortunately for her, I'm more stubborn. Now, I said, tell me why you've been fighting this. Why not just accept responsibility from the beginning? She exhaled sharply. Because I can't afford this, okay, I already have bills, and I'm not the one who let the dog get aggressive. There it is, I murmured, the truth limping in late to the party. You're not denying ownership because it's true. You're denying ownership because it's convenient. She glared at me. What am I supposed to do? Put the dog down because one person got bit. I fixed her with a stare so flat the air went colder. No, you're supposed to control your animal. You're supposed to protect your neighbors. You're supposed to act like an adult. I turned to the plaintiff. Had you ever had a problem with this dog before? Yes, he said. It had growled and lunged at the fence a few times when I passed. I tried crossing the street, but this time it was already out. Did you ever talk to Miss Donnelly about it? I did, he replied. 2 weeks before this. I knocked on her door and told her the dog scared me. She just said, he doesn't bite. Just ignore him. My eyes snapped back to her. Did you say that? She shifted in her chair. I might have. He's never bitten anyone before. That you know of, I said, or that admitted it. Objection, she muttered. You don't get to object, I shot back. This isn't a game show. This is small claims court. I am the objection. The gallery laughed. Even the bailiff smirked for half a second before locking it down again. I held up the medical bills. These are a little over $3,000. Add in the cost of his ruined clothing and a modest amount for pain and suffering, and you're not staring at an absurd figure. You're staring at the bare minimum it costs to live next to someone who thinks responsibility is optional. I tapped the papers on the bench. You had warning, Miss Donnelly. You had noticed that your dog was aggressive or at least intimidating. You had an opportunity to take steps, training better, fencing a leash, something. Instead, you waved him off like a noisy appliance. She opened her mouth to protest, but I cut her off. I've heard it all before. He's a good dog. He was just scared. He didn't mean it. Dogs operate on instinct. Humans are supposed to operate on judgment. When judgment fails, instinct wins and people get hurt. Let's clarify something, I said. Do you keep the gate to your yard closed at all times? She hesitated. Usually is not an answer, I snapped. If I asked you if you usually stop at red lights, would that make you a safe driver or a lunatic? Her lips pressed into a line. Sometimes the latch sticks. So you knew the gate was faulty, I concluded, but you still allowed an aggressive, untrained dog to be in that yard unattended, and then you want me to pretend it's some cosmic accident that it ended up in the street. I leaned forward. No, this isn't an accident. This is negligence with fur. She exhaled loudly. I just didn't think it would happen. I stared at her for a long moment. You know who else says that? Every person who slaps a does not bite sign on their dog's reputation and then meets a lawyer. Your job as a dog owner is to assume it can happen and make sure it doesn't. The plaintiff shifted slightly, and I saw the discomfort in his eyes. It wasn't just about the bills. Being attacked does something to people. It rewires their sense of safety. And it's amazing how quickly that gets dismissed by the person who caused it. Mr. Harris, I said, how has this affected you? He swallowed. I changed my walking route. I don't walk past her house anymore. I flinch when I hear a bark. My doctor said it'll fade, but it's still there. I nodded. Of course it is. Having 60 pounds of teeth coming at you tends to leave a mark somewhere other than your medical records. I looked back at the defendant. Did you ever apologize to him? She shifted. I told him it wasn't my fault. I said the dog just got excited. So the answer is no, I said. You didn't apologize. You minimized. You excused. And then when faced with a lawsuit, you denied the dog was even yours. Her eyes started to water. Tears. People think tears move me. They don't. Not when they come after the consequences, not before the behavior. Save it, I said. Crying now is like throwing water on a house that's already burned down. You should have thought about this when you were busy pretending this dog was an independent contractor." "Your Honor," she said quietly, "I really didn't mean for him to get hurt." I lowered my voice. "I believe that. I don't think you set the dog on him like some villain in a cartoon. But not meaning for something to happen doesn't erase your responsibility when you created the conditions for it." I let that sink in. She needed to hear it. The gallery needed to hear it. Half the people in any courtroom need to hear it. I looked down at the file again and saw the animal control report, a note that the defendant had refused to sign official ownership but agreed to take temporary custody of the dog. I almost laughed. "You know what really bothers me, Miss Donnelly?" I asked. She sniffed. "What?" "This little phrase," I said, reading from the report. "Temporary custody. You wanted the dog but not the liability. You wanted the companionship, the affection, the cute Instagram photos, the emotional comfort. But the second that dog's actions required you to step up, suddenly it's not mine." I snapped the folder shut. You don't get to own hearts and disown consequences. Her jaw trembled. "So what happens now?" Now I said, "I do my job, and my job is to decide who's responsible. Spoiler alert, it's you." I turned to the plaintiff. "You're asking for your full medical bills, the cost of your clothes, and a small amount for pain and suffering. That figure is reasonable. You were injured. You did nothing wrong. You had even previously warned her about the dog. Anything less than full compensation would be another bite, this time out of justice." I faced the defendant again, locking onto her eyes, so there was no escape route. "You will pay his medical bills. You will pay for his clothing. You will pay a modest sum for pain and suffering. And if you're smart, and I am not yet convinced, you will also invest in a leash, a trainer, and a working gate latch." She looked like she wanted to argue. People like her always do. But something in my tone, or maybe the corner she'd backed herself into, finally shut her mouth. "Do you own that dog, Miss Donnelly?" I asked one last time. She paused, then nodded slowly. "Yes, Your Honor, I own him." For the record, I said I had already decided that 15 minutes ago. But it's healthy for you to say it out loud. Maybe the reality will catch up with your behavior. I picked up my pen, judgment for the plaintiff, in the amount of... And right then, as if the universe wanted one final test, she blurted, "But can't he meet me halfway?" I dropped the pen and stared at her. The bailiff actually winced. "Halfway," I repeated. "Halfway for what?" "For the privilege of being bitten on his morning walk, for walking past your house instead of teleporting." She opened and closed her mouth like a fish in shallow water. "You don't negotiate with harm after the fact," I said. "You prevented before. You had your chance. You chose denial instead. Denial is expensive. Today you get the bill." I wrote down the judgment amount, signed it, and handed it to the clerk. "Judgment for the plaintiff," I announced. "Full amount requested. That's all." The moment I said "that's all," Miss Donnelly exhaled, like she'd been holding her breath for 20 straight minutes. I've seen that look before, the mix of defeat and disbelief, like life had personally ambushed her. People don't realize life rarely ambushes you. Most of the time you walk straight into the trap you set for yourself. But I wasn't finished, not in my mind. Cases don't end when I bang the gavel. They end when the truth finally sits comfortably in the room. Hers was still pacing nervously, unsure whether to stay or run. The bailiff called the next case, but as Mr. Harris walked out, he paused at the door. He turned back toward me like he wanted to say something. I've seen gratitude and I've seen relief, but what I saw in his eyes was something different. Vindication. The kind a person carries quietly because they've been doubted before, dismissed before, minimized before, being told the truth matters, that changes people. He nodded at me. Just a small gesture. I returned it with the barest dip of my chin. I don't need applause. I need clarity. Miss Donnelly stayed seated a moment longer than she needed to. People like her don't like to stand up after losing. They're afraid the world will notice the weight of accountability on their shoulders. But she got up, eventually gathered her purse, shoved her papers inside without looking, and shuffled out of the courtroom like a child who'd been grounded for the first time in her life. As she walked past me, I caught a glimpse of something unexpected. Not anger, not resentment, but confusion. People build such elaborate fantasies to avoid responsibility that when reality finally knocks on their door, it feels like a stranger. The next case proceeded, but my mind hadn't dropped the dog yet. I've seen too many cases like this, good dogs with bad owners. And let me be clear, the dog was not the villain. Dogs do what dogs do. They respond to leadership training boundaries. When those things are absent, they fill the gap with instinct. Instinct and suburban sidewalks rarely blend smoothly. By lunchtime, I stepped out of the courtroom and into the hallway, and immediately my instincts sharpened. There, about 20 feet away, stood Miss Donnelly, leaning against the wall, arms crossed, face stormy, like she was waiting for me. Wonderful. Because nothing brightens my sandwich break like unresolved tension lurking near the vending machine. She pushed off the wall and walked toward me, determination in her eyes, but hesitation in her steps. Always an interesting combination. Your Honor, she said, her voice tight, I need to ask you something. No, I replied immediately. If you're planning to argue the case again, save your breath. I already heard your best material. It wasn't good. She shook her head. I'm not arguing. I just want to understand. That was new. Understanding is not a common visitor in these hallways. I sighed internally but stopped walking. Fine. Ask. Why were you so hard on me, she asked. I mean, I didn't hurt him. The dog did. I looked at her the way a parent looks at a child who asks why they can't drink glue. Because you created the circumstances that allowed it to happen, I said. And then you denied it. Boldly. Repeatedly. Badly. But I was scared, she said. I don't have extra money. If I admit fault, I have to pay. Isn't it natural to try to protect yourself? Sure, I said. If the danger is falling rocks or an unexpected medical bill, not when you protecting yourself means lying and letting someone else deal with the fallout. She opened her mouth to respond, but I held up a hand. You want honesty? Here's honesty. You didn't deny ownership because you believed it. You denied ownership because it was convenient. And convenience is not a legal defense. It's barely even a moral one. Her eyes lowered, not because she disagreed, because she couldn't argue. I continued, being responsible isn't optional. You don't get to enjoy the company of a dog for a year, let it sleep in your home, post cute photos of it licking your face, and then pretend it's a stray the moment it becomes inconvenient. She looked up sharply. I never posted photos. Oh, please, I said. You strike me as the type who has entire folders in her phone labeled Buddy being cute. Her face reddened. Guilty. I didn't need her phone to confirm it. Let me ask you something, I said. Did you ever think to train the dog? She hesitated. I didn't have the money. Did you think to fix your gait? I meant to. Did you consider using a leash outside? I sometimes. Stop, I said bluntly. You sometimes did the things you should always do. And that's the difference between responsible ownership and chaos. She grew quiet again, finally absorbing, finally listening. Then she surprised me. I didn't mean to lie, she said softly. I just panicked. I felt like if I admitted it, it would be too much. And what you don't seem to understand, I replied, is that lying makes too much become even more. Every time you deny the truth, it grows teeth. She swallowed hard. I messed up. Yes, I said, but that's not what bothers me. She looked confused. Then what does... You were willing to let him carry the consequences of your mess. Her eyes widened slightly. She hadn't thought of it that way. Most people don't, because guilt blinds you just as effectively as arrogance. I didn't think he'd sue, she whispered. And I didn't think I'd spend my 70s explaining elementary ethics to adults. I said sharply, yet here we are. She actually laughed. A small, humorless puff of air, but a laugh nonetheless. I'll pay him, she said. The full amount. I'll figure it out. That's a start, I replied. Now the more important question, what about the dog? She blinked. What do you mean? Are you going to take responsibility for him, train him, secure your property? Or is this going to happen again in 6 months with a different neighbor and a more expensive doctor? Her lips pressed together, and for a moment I saw the war playing out behind her eyes, pride versus responsibility, fear versus decency. Finally, she said, I'll take care of it. I will. Good, I said, because the next judge might not be as patient as I am. She raised an eyebrow. Patient. I smirked. Yes. Imagine that. She let out a breath, a long, cleansing one. Thank you, she said quietly. I don't give hugs. I don't coddle. But I do recognize when someone is finally stepping into adulthood. Don't thank me, I said. Just do better. For your neighbor, for your dog, mostly for yourself. She nodded and walked away, her steps heavier but her posture straighter. Growth is uncomfortable. That's how you know it's real. I continued down the hallway, finally heading toward my lunch, cold by now, but that's the sacrifice. Justice doesn't eat on time. As I reached the door to my chambers, I paused, just for a moment, not because I doubted my decision, but because I understood something about her. She wasn't malicious, she wasn't cruel, she wasn't heartless. She was simply human. And sometimes in my courtroom, humanity walks in wearing denial like armor. My job is to strip it off, even if it stings, especially if it stings. I pushed open the door, ready for the next case, ready for the next lie, ready for the next truth. Because in the end, that's why they come to my courtroom. Not for comfort, for clarity. Back in my chambers, I finally sat down with my lunch, which was now about as appealing as a witness who starts every sentence with technically. I poked at it with the plastic fork, wondering when I'd last eaten a warm meal during court hours. Probably sometime in the late 90 seconds before people started treating responsibility like it was optional, like guacamole, extra charge. Take it or leave it. I took one bite. Cold, tasteless. The culinary equivalent of an excuse. Before I could suffer through the second bite, there was a knock at my door. Not a polite one, not a timid one, a fast one, 3 sharp raps. The kind of knock that announces something stupid is happening and you're the designated adult. Come in. I called already, bracing myself. My clerk poked her head inside. Your Honor, there's a situation in the hallway. Of course there was. There's always a situation. Courts are magnets for drama like moths that prefer fluorescent lighting and questionable decisions. What kind of situation, I asked. She hesitated. That was never good. It involves the defendant from the dog case, Miss Donnelly. I set my fork down. Let me guess, she found a new lie on the way out. No, she's crying and refusing to leave. She says she needs to talk to you again. I resisted the urge to roll my eyes. Not because I'm heartless, believe it or not, I do have a heart. It just has a very strict schedule and does not accept walk-ins. I already spoke to her, I said, and I was extremely generous with my time. She says it's urgent. I stood. Fine. Let's go prevent whatever this emotional landslide is before someone slips on it. When we stepped into the hallway, I saw her instantly leaning against the wall, wiping her face with a tissue that looked like it had already surrendered. People gave her a wide berth, not out of malice, but because raw emotion in public spaces makes others uncomfortable. They treat it like a sneezed duck avoid run. She looked up when she saw me. Your Honor, I'm sorry. I know I shouldn't bother you. That's correct, I said. But we're already here, so continue. She took a shaky breath. I went outside to call a trainer, to start fixing things. And while I was talking, Buddy, he wasn't with me, but he heard my voice from the yard of the friend who drove me here. And he got loose and he ran toward the street. I raised a hand. Is anyone hurt? No, she said quickly. No one. A man grabbed him by the collar before he crossed. But the thing is, the trainer asked me something. He asked why Buddy reacts the way he does. And I told him, I don't know. I don't know anything about his past. Her voice cracked. I adopted him because he showed up in my yard one day. He looked hungry, sad, abandoned. I told myself I was helping him, but maybe I wasn't. Maybe I just filled the space. I folded my arms, and this sudden epiphany is why you stopped me in the middle of my cold lunch. She nodded miserably. I'm scared I don't know how to help him. I'm scared I created the problem, and I'm scared if I mess up again, someone could really get hurt. Her fear wasn't melodramatic. It wasn't manipulative. It was honest. And honesty, while refreshing, is rarely simple. Miss Donnelly, I said, welcome to the club. It's called being a responsible human being. It comes with fear, doubt, and the occasional desire to run screaming into the woods. She let out a small, startled laugh despite herself. I continued, you can't change the past. You can't undo the bite. You can't erase your denial. But you can choose the next right action, and then the next one, and the next. She nodded slowly, absorbing. And for the record, I added, I don't care if you adopted Buddy because you were lonely or kind or clueless. What matters is what you do from this moment forward. She looked up. Do you think I can fix it, really fix it? I gave her the most honest answer anyone in authority can offer. I don't know. But you can certainly make it worse if you do nothing. That landed. Heavy but necessary. She took a slow breath. I'll do everything I can, I promise. Good, I said. Start with a trainer. Fix the gate latch. Keep him leashed until he's predictable. And here's the most important part. Don't lie to yourself about what you're capable of managing. She nodded again, firmer this time. Less trembling, more grounded. Thank you, Your Honor, she whispered. Don't thank me. I'm not your therapist. I'm the judge who told you the truth because no one else had the nerve. She half smiled. I guess I needed that. Most people do, I said. They just don't like the packaging. She finally straightened her shoulders, stuffed the defeated tissue into her purse, and walked toward the exit with purpose. For the first time all day, she looked like someone who had chosen responsibility instead of running from it. As she disappeared through the doors, my clerk whispered, Do you think she'll follow through? I sighed. That's the thing about people. They'll tell you they will, and sometimes they even believe it. But the truth doesn't show up in promises. It shows up in behavior. Ask me again in 6 months. We turned to head back to chambers when the bailiff approached. Judge, he said, you've got a stack of afternoon cases waiting. One of them says it's urgent. They all say that, I replied. And they're all wrong. Still, I walked back into the courtroom. Because that's what I do. Day after day, year after year, I peel back the excuses, the delusions, the self-protection layers people wrap themselves in. Not because I enjoy it, though I won't pretend it's not occasionally satisfying, but because someone has to drag the truth into the light. And apparently today that someone was also going to miss lunch entirely. I took my seat again, scanned the docket, and braced myself for whatever chaos was next. Because justice doesn't wait, and it definitely doesn't reheat. The afternoon cases rolled in the way they always do, like a parade of people who believe they're the exception to common sense. And I apparently was the elected parade marshal. Wonderful. The first case involved two cousins fighting over a jet ski they both claimed to own, but neither claimed to have damaged. The second was a landlord who forgot to disclose that the apartment's ceiling occasionally collapsed during heavy emotional stress. The third was so ridiculous I actually felt my remaining neurons packing their bags. But in between the noise, the excuses, the theatrics, my mind wandered back just briefly to Miss Donnelly and her sudden moral awakening in the hallway. It wasn't sympathy. I don't deal in sympathy. It was something closer to curiosity. Because every once in a while a person surprises me. Not often, and never predictably. By 4 o'clock, my patience had evaporated, my pen had run out of ink, and my bailiff had given me the look. The one that says, if you don't adjourn, soon someone is going to need medical attention, and it won't be the litigants. I dismissed the courtroom, gathered my files, and headed toward the exit. The hallway had quieted just the soft echo of footsteps and the tinge of floor cleaner. My heels clicked with that familiar rhythm I'd grown accustomed to after decades, justice in, justice out. When I reached the front steps of the building, the early evening sun hit my eyes and I blinked against the light. My driver wasn't there yet, not surprising considering traffic flows in this city with the grace of a clogged drain. So I stood for a moment, letting the breeze cool the hours off my face. Then I heard it. A bark. Not sharp, not aggressive. A single curious woof from somewhere behind me. I turned. There stood a man with a leash in his hand, and at the end of it, sitting obediently, tail gently sweeping the ground, was Buddy. Buddy the biter, Buddy the runaway, Buddy the dog, whose ownership denial had cost someone $3,000 in a trip to small claims court, and next to him, holding a small folder and a noticeably sturdier gate latch in a hardware store bag, was Miss Donnelly. She looked different, not completely transformed, let's not get carried away, but noticeably more grounded, like someone who had taken a long, honest look in the mirror and survived it. She approached cautiously. Your Honor, I raised an eyebrow. If you're here to appeal, forget it. The answer is no and will remain no, even if you bring baked goods. She shook her head quickly. No, I'm not appealing. I just wanted to show you something. She handed me the folder. Inside were three things: a receipt from a professional dog trainer, a confirmation for an appointment with a veterinary behaviorist, a photo printed, not digital, of Buddy wearing a new harness, sitting calmly beside a trainer with firm hands and a confident stance. I looked at the papers and then at her. "You're moving fast." She shrugged, small, sheepish, but sincere. "When you said responsibility is choosing the next right action, I realized I haven't made a right action in a while, so I figured it was time." I nodded once. "It's a good start." "And I fixed the gate," she added quickly, holding up the latch like it was a trophy she'd won in a local accountability contest. Buddy wagged his tail at me. I didn't reach out to pet him. Judges don't pet key evidence, but he had that look dogs get when they've decided you're safe. Warm eyes, eager, hopeful. "I wanted you to know," she said, "that I'm actually going to do this. Not because of the judgment, not because I'm scared of another lawsuit, but because I owe it to him and to myself." I studied her a long moment. People often mistake me for someone who delights in scolding. They forget the part where I actually want them to grow. But growth requires truth, and truth requires courage. Most people show up with neither. But she had finally chosen both. "Good," I said simply, because that's all it deserved. Not applause, not praise, just acknowledgement. The man holding the leash, presumably a trainer, gave me a polite nod. "He's a smart dog," he said. "Just needed structure." I smirked. Most creatures do. Miss Donnelly hesitated, then asked, Do you think I can handle him long term? I mean, ask me in 6 months," I said. "Responsibility is a habit, not a moment." She smiled softly. "I'll work on it." "Work," I replied, "will do more for you than worry ever will." Just then my car pulled up. The driver got out, opened the door, and nodded respectfully. I stepped toward the vehicle, but before I got in, I turned back to her. "Miss Donnelly." She straightened. "Yes, Your Honor. You did the right thing today. The real right thing. And if you keep doing that, you won't see me again." She blinked. "Is that good or bad?" "Very good," I said dryly. "People who learn don't return." She laughed, actually laughed this time. Buddy barked once in what I can only assume was agreement. As I lowered myself into the car, I took one last glance at the scene. A woman, a dog, a trainer, a new beginning held together by a metal gate latch and a late-blooming sense of responsibility. Oddly enough, it didn't irritate me. Not even a little. Because justice isn't always about punishment. Sometimes it's about correction. Sometimes it's about waking people up. Sometimes it's about preventing the next disaster instead of just cleaning up the last one. The door closed and the city blurred past the window as we pulled away. Another day, another truth dragged into the daylight. Another human being nudged, shoved, or dragged toward accountability, kicking, screaming, and occasionally learning. I leaned back in my seat, closed my eyes for just a moment, and let the quiet settle around me. I may not get warm lunches. I may not get peace, but I get justice. And that's enough